What's up, you guys? Justin Rivas here. Just wanted to share as quickly as possible my process to editing my vlogs, and hopefully there's some tips and tricks throughout here that you can use. I don't want this video to be an hour long though, so I'm gonna try and move through it. And if there's something specifically where you're like, I don't understand that, I don't get that, or I want to learn more about that, drop a comment and I'll probably link you to an article or another video where somebody can explain it a lot better in depth. But if I have to cover every little piece in super detail, we're gonna lose lots of people. So I don't wanna do that. So anyway, let's just kind of jump into my entire process for editing from start to finish. And if you're used to seeing a microphone on my nice little vlog camera, it's on that one. Anyway, let's get into it here. So first thing I do is I'm gonna pop this open. I'm gonna grab the SD card slot. It is going to go into the computer to get copied to my video editing drive. It's important that you have a second drive for editing your videos from, because your main computer drive needs to be reserved for, you know, running the programs and your operating system, whether that's Windows or Mac, but it needs to worry about those kinds of things, whereas a second drive just needs to read the video files. For me, I use a solid state drive because they're the fastest, and that's great. If you don't have that, don't worry about that. Even a portable hard drive is good. USB 3.1, better. Solid state, even better, but do with whatever you got. So this is gonna go into the computer, and I'm gonna copy that, start the process. Next thing I'm gonna do is pull out my battery and put this on the charger, because there's nothing worse than running out of batteries. I have 3 of them, but it's easy if you're not paying attention and suddenly have 3 dead batteries, and that's a problem for the next day of vlogging. So once those files are all onto the computer and onto my editing drive, I boot up a new Premiere instance. For me, that's what I use, Premiere, but any program is fine, and I import the files in there. Computer's fast enough these days that they can typically just render on the fly, so I don't have to wait. So I get all of them into the project. I don't worry about putting them all into bins and folders because I typically don't have that many clips. And even like a standard vlogging day for me is probably 30 to 50, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 5, 31 clips I have today. So this is pretty small, but I know lots of these are like really long clips, so I'll have to sort through them. My really busy vlogging days, I think the most I've had is about 230 clips, and that's a lot, but even then I didn't feel the need to organize them. I just kind of throw them into my timeline and start going through them. Next thing I do is I organize them by name, because the camera can not typically puts them in order. Great thing to do. Put them in by name. I use 3-point editing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this technique. Google it if you're not, but that's basically where you bring up a clip in the window here, and you just hit play to start watching, and then you mark the in and the out point, meaning you don't bring the whole clip into the timeline and then trim it down. Before you do that, you just simply get to hit play here, and you go like, oh, I want to start here, so you hit, for me it's I to go in, you watch to the point, you're like, oh yeah, right there, out, and then you drag it in the timeline. And I just keep working through all of my clips, just grabbing the individual little pieces that I want along the way, till I've probably got 100 or so little things throughout my timeline. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is, after I've kind of got it laid out where I think I have the whole flow of the day, and the nice thing about vlogging is it's very linear, typically, as you're starting and going all your way through. Sometimes you have vlogs where maybe you start your intro from something later, that's fine, throw it in the beginning, but I just kind of work my way through, pulling out all the little bits of things that I like until I've got it on the timeline. Then typically I know when I'm shooting throughout the day whether a vlog's going to be a little bit too long or not, but that's where I'll go back through at the beginning and watch through it again and remove anything that I don't think is necessary, because I don't want people getting bored or feeling like the vlog is too long. So if I'm watching anyway, I'm like, this isn't. I try and always cut something from my vlog just so I never get too attached to it. So I'm always trying to remove little bits out there. Or sometimes I'll get to vlog and I'm like, this vlog is like 16 minutes. I want it to be like 10 to 12. So I'll just go back through and watch and pull out the little pieces. Once I've gone through that process, I've got them all assembled, I'm feeling good about what the overall vlog is gonna be. Next comes music for me. Now I use a site called audioblocks.com for a lot of my music. I'm through 117 vlogs. Starting to get a little bit sick of all the music on there. I've pulled out most of the good stuff that I like. They did just release some more, so that's good. But then I'm just gonna lay out the music. And so depending on the sequence or depending on the day, I typically always like having music for my intro. And then if I'm driving or showing things off or riding on boosted board, I like having music to play over top of that. Typically I'll go through and delete all the background audio that isn't necessary in them because they just make it a little bit more noisy. And then if I'm talking in some clips in the middle of a sequence, I'll go through and with my little pen tool, which is Premiere, but you're basically just drawing your audio and you're turning it down over all the spots where you're talking so it's easier to hear your audio. So I'll do that and kind of go through and make sure that all of my voice is very, very clear throughout the process if I have music behind it. And honestly, music can be one of the most time-consuming parts of finding the music, finding the right music, putting in the timeline. As I've laid out my music, it's helpful to cut on the beat, meaning if you got like a do, 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 cut, cut, cut. It just helps the flow of it as opposed to cutting in the middle of beats. You want to cut on like hard like kicks like do, or a snare that's like a snap. That really helps with the editing process as well, as feeling like the vlog's moving along and makes it a little bit more creative. Don't overdo that, but use that a lot. Once I've got my music laid out on the timeline, I'm getting pretty close. Now for me, I add a little bit of style to the entire vlog, meaning I put on what's called an adjustment layer, which lays over top the whole thing, and then I add a little bit more contrast, a little bit of saturation. I vignette the corners, which means the corners just look a little bit darker, and it just kind of helps glue the whole project together, you know, in stylistically wise, so it just feels, you know, a lot more like cohesive together. I add my Snapchat little overlay on top, and then I add my YouTube card at the end, and add the outro music, and then I'm pretty much done after I've updated the intro slide to make sure that I update the, you know, next number of my vlog and the date and, you know, the title. And that's kind of the entire process. Then render it out to YouTube. Premiere has a setting for YouTube, so whether I'm shooting at 1080 or if I'm shooting at 4K, I just select that one. Usually works well. And then I let it go, and it renders. And I think that's about the entire process, start to finish. Dump the files, set up the Premiere project, suck them in, organize them in the proper order that you can follow along. I use 3-point editing. In, out, clip goes in the timeline. Keep watching. In, out, clip goes into the timeline. Another little tip you can use is in Premiere, it's L. I'm not sure in other ones, but you can actually watch clips at faster speeds where you can still make out what they're saying, but you sound a little bit like a chipmunk, but it's a quicker way to get through that. Once I've got it laid out on the timeline, then for me comes music, finding the music, putting it on the timeline, putting it to the beat, making sure that that feels good, ducking the audio so that it comes down when I'm talking so that people are able to hear me. Then I add that little bit of glue over top in the style, and things like Snapchat card, end card, outro music, render it out, and that's pretty much it. The only thing I didn't mention again was go back through, cut anything that you don't need, or anything that you think, oh, I'm not sure about, just cut it. You know, just cut it. It's not always necessary. And I think if you do that, you'll end up with good vlogs. And that's what's worked for me through 116 or 117 vlogs. I've gotten much faster at it, and yeah, there's probably some other techniques or things. Anyway, any questions, any comments, any of your advice, drop it in the comments below. Hopefully there's something in there that helped you. Cool. I'm Justin Rivas. Thank you for watching.